Al Capone, how the son of poor immigrants became America's most dangerous gangster. Imagine a man feared by politicians, police officers, and even other criminals. A man whose name, more than a century later, remains a symbol of organized crime. His name was Al Capone. What makes his story even more remarkable is that this legendary gangster was not born into wealth. He entered the world in 1899 in New York City, the son of poor Italian immigrants. His parents dreamed of a better life, but the streets of the big city had a very different future in store for their son. From an early age, Al grew up in a rough neighborhood where crime was part of everyday life. He struggled in school and frequently got into trouble. At the age of 14, he was expelled after a fight with a teacher. Thrown into the streets, the teenager quickly fell under the influence of local gangs. It was there that he first entered the criminal world, a world that would eventually bring him enormous wealth and power. There is a famous story about how Al Capone received the scar that made him instantly recognizable. While working as a bouncer in a bar, he made a rude comment to a young woman. Her brother reacted by pulling a knife and slashing Capone across the face. The wound left a permanent scar, earning him the nickname Scarface. Capone hated the nickname and often tried to hide the scar in photographs. Al Capone's real rise to power began after he moved to Chicago. There he worked for the powerful gangster Johnny Torrio. Around that time, the United States entered the era of Prohibition, a nationwide ban on the sale of alcohol. The law may have banned alcohol, but it did not stop people from wanting to drink. Criminal organizations quickly recognized an enormous opportunity. Capone understood the game almost immediately. He built a vast network of illegal bars, alcohol smuggling operations, and underground casinos. Money poured in. When Johnny Torrio retired after surviving an assassination attempt, Capone took over the organization. He was only 26 years old. Before long, he became the most powerful criminal in Chicago. His empire generated millions of dollars every year. He lived in luxurious mansions, drove expensive automobiles, and surrounded himself with bodyguards. But power always comes at a price. To eliminate rivals, Capone relied on ruthless methods. The most infamous example was the St. Valentine's Day Massacre in 1929. Men connected to Capone, disguised as police officers, lured members of a rival gang into a garage and opened fire. 7 people were killed. The massacre made headlines across America. Newspapers labeled Capone the most dangerous man in the country. Yet there was one problem. Despite numerous murders and criminal activities linked to his organization, law enforcement could never directly prove his involvement. It seemed as though Capone was always one step ahead of the law, but his downfall came from an unexpected direction. Federal investigators stopped focusing on murders and gang violence. Instead, they examined his finances. They discovered that Capone had concealed massive amounts of income from the government. In the end, it was tax evasion, not murder, that brought him down. In 1931, the notorious gangster was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Later, he was transferred to the legendary prison of Alcatraz, where his money and influence could no longer protect him. Years behind bars severely damaged Capone's health. Illness gradually weakened both his body and his mind. By the time he was released, he was no longer the powerful figure who had once terrified America. The remainder of his life was spent far from the criminal empire he had built. In 1947, Al Capone died at the age of 48. Thus ended the story of a man who built a criminal empire worth millions of dollars but could not escape accountability forever. His life serves as a reminder that even the most powerful individuals cannot hide from the law indefinitely. His name entered history not as that of a hero, but as a symbol of power, wealth, and the dangers of organized crime. However, there is one detail many people forget. Despite his reputation as a ruthless gangster, Al Capone worked hard to present himself as a man of the people. He understood the power of public opinion better than many politicians of his era. While newspapers reported on shootings and gang wars, Capone donated money to charitable causes, helped struggling families, and supported community projects. When the Great Depression struck America in 1929, millions lost their jobs and their means of survival. Families across the country faced hunger and desperation. During this difficult period, Capone opened a free soup kitchen in Chicago, serving hot meals to thousands of people every day. To many ordinary citizens, he did not appear to be a criminal. Instead, he seemed like someone willing to help when the government appeared unable to do so, but behind this generosity was a calculating mind. Charitable efforts helped him win public sympathy and reduce pressure from authorities. The more people viewed him as a benefactor, the harder it became for police to gather information about his criminal operations. And now, decades after his death, the name Al Capone remains known throughout the world. His story continues to fascinate people because it combines ambition, power, wealth, violence, and ultimately downfall. It is the story of a poor immigrant son who rose from the streets of New York to build one of the most notorious criminal empires in American history. Yet, despite all his money, influence, and fearsome reputation, he could not escape the consequences of his actions. Today, Al Capone is remembered not only as a gangster, but as a warning. His rise showed how quickly power can be gained through crime. His fall showed how quickly it can disappear, and perhaps that is why, more than 70 years after his death, the legend of Al Capone still captures the imagination of people around the world.